put the year because sometimes it could have been 2 years. So, anybody have questions or want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So we got six affirmative.
7. No, we got 6.
Yeah,
Never mind.
6.
My mathing and mathing.
All right, move on. Nothing on old business, so we'll go to new business. Gradson Land Development amendment to the preliminary plat and waiver for construction standards.
Yeah, it is.
Do I have to say that I'm opening up the public
Yeah,
hearing?
let's
Okay.
do it.
So this will be a public hearing on this, so I'm opening it up for the public hearing. Adam, you're gonna give your presentation.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate the time. I'm glad to be here in front of you again. I'm Adam Mears. I'm with Gradson Land Development. Mark Gradson here with me as well. The purpose of this is to look at an amended primary plat. I mean, we were here before, the one that got approved back in December, with some changes based upon the traffic study. I think there's been some, in my opinion, some confusion about the commitments that were made. So I just want to kind of go back in history and about how we got here. So as you guys know, back in February of 24 was kind of the first time we reached out to the town to start talking about the development of this piece. And we really spent all of the next 7 months working on our plan, both as a whole, working on our rezone ordinance, working on our development plan, and then our primary plat. During that 7-8 months, we spent a lot of time with Dwayne and Matt, and with Lee's help on behalf of the town, kind of negotiating out our PUD ordinance that we have here today. During those discussions, initially, and I know Matt and Dwayne can speak to this as well, initially, the town's position was they wanted to have control of the traffic study and have their group do the traffic study. We kind of never really kicked that off. And eventually we said, do you just want us to do the traffic study or have A&F do the traffic study? It was agreed that they would do that, and we sent them off and running. In the meantime, while we were working through these approvals, we talked about the fact that we did have a traffic study, that what are we going to do about whatever improvements come in. So we committed as part of our PUD ordinance to the following language that simply says the developer shall construct all entrance and road improvements. I think the word entrance there is important because there would be, the entrance is part of the traffic study. So we spent a lot of time negotiating these commitments. We had several iterations. This was the final version, and it was us saying, we don't know what the traffic study is going to say. We'll do whatever the traffic study says. We come, we have our hearing. Because we didn't know what the traffic study was going to say, we put some entryway features on our primary plat. Come to find out, we get the traffic study, I think maybe even the day after our hearing, we were approved on the 5th of December, and the traffic study recommends 0 improvements to the entryways. We communicated back with the town and said, hey, we don't, clearly the traffic study didn't call for anything. Lee and I had some legal letters going back to each other about what each of our positions are. I don't think we changed either of each other's minds from a legal standpoint. But the reality is, it's our opinion that we all talked about this ad nauseum. That if the traffic study came back with significant improvements, we were bound by that. The traffic study came back without requiring improvements, and now we're being told that the town's not going to allow that. They're going to require some entry features that the traffic study makes clear aren't necessary. So we have revised our primary plat to come back, and we're not doing anything. We're not proposing to not do anything. We're just not going as far as what the engineers have suggested, even in light of the traffic study. And I say the town's engineer, they came back and said, hey, you gotta follow these road construction standards, even though our PUD ordinance that we agreed to says entryway and road improvements. If it just said road improvements, I think I'd have a difficult time standing in front of you and having this discussion. We specifically negotiated the word entrance for a reason. And again, whatever came in this traffic study was gonna be what it is. I think A&F is one of the premier traffic study operations in the state. I'm sure any engineering firm is familiar with them, and their recommendation was essentially no improvements. I'm gonna let Mark talk about what improvements we've included that were above and beyond what the traffic study said, but what we're here today is to ask for a waiver of the construction standard requiring, I think it's the channelized left turn and passing blisters, because again, the traffic study doesn't require it. And our agreement in the PUD says whatever's required by the traffic study will do, both entrance and road. So that's what we're here today. One of the distinctions I also want to point out is when you do a primary plat, it's primary for a reason. It's certainly not fully engineered plans. That's the ground level when you start getting into those first section construction docs. These change over time as we continued our engineering once we got our primary plat approved. So when you see a primary plat that has changes, well, it has changes because our engineering has continued on down the road. So it's not as if we went and changed a bunch of stuff in the primary plat. It's just that our engineering is further down the line. So there are changes to the primary plat, and a lot of those are also in the townhome area because Lennar is no longer going to be in the townhome area. We got a different builder that has some other requirements. So in a nutshell, that's what we're here today. I've got communication where there's been acknowledgments that we're gonna go with what the traffic study says. That's all we're trying to abide by. So our primary plat is here to modify the original one that had those placeholders because the traffic study wasn't done, and substitute out so we can get busy here. So I'll let Mark kind of chime in on some of the technical things, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Good evening.
Evening.
Good evening.
Just to piggyback a little bit on what Adam said, so what we had proposed in our construction plans, and then slash also then therefore in this revised primary plat, was instead of just coming out with just a tight 40-foot radius out onto the road, we did have enough room to put in a 50-foot taper, A cell and D cell on all three entrances. So we have some circumstances surrounding this site that make it a little challenging from both a property perspective, purchasing property, as well as topo and kind of the physical nature. On our north entrance at Sawmill, excuse me, which you see on, follow along, it doesn't show the church, but most of you probably know. So on the back page, of what Adam handed out to you, our entry point is at the very kind of north edge of where we are on our site. So with that, and maybe I'll talk here, chat about it. So at this north end here, north of us is the church that's there, and their parking lot is immediately adjacent to the existing right-of-way, within a few feet of that. And so if we would put in a full D-cell lane there, we would end up having to take some of their parking lot and some of their parking spaces and disturb what's going on there. On Whiteland Road, which would be this one, there is a center point gas transmission line on the south side of Whiteland Road. Therefore, we could not do a traditional passing blister. We would have to do a left turn or left turn lane shift in order to accomplish that. Then next to that, adjacent almost to that, we have a culvert, a pretty good sized culvert that Johnson County is in the midst of redesigning and going to be installing. sometime in '26, it sounds like. But that culvert then gets to be in the way and gets to be part of the issue there as well as we do that left shift. So really, I think, you know, and Adam kind of laid out our case, if you will, on where we stand with how this whole thing kind of goes together. A&F Engineering, Steve Fairlock, and the guys there, you know, they said that we really didn't need anything. And you guys got the 2 pages of the conclusions that we highlighted for you. At any of the intersections or the entryways, they basically said one outgoing, one incoming traffic lane. By us adding those tapers, that helps give enough room for people to be able to get by the guy turning left, they can get by and scoot out to the right. We do have some tapers in there, which will help the traffic flow from that perspective as well. So we do have 4 entrances with this neighborhood. We have 2 on Sawmill, 1 on Whiteland, and then we do connect to the neighborhood to the north. So it's not like we just have 2 entry points where everybody's going to be, or 1, where everybody's going to be going to. We'll have some folks, you know, spread around a little bit from the development perspective and the timing of those trips as you know them, or as the traffic engineers know them. And then as Adam mentioned, just moving on from there, as Adam mentioned, we also, in our homes, decided to build the attached product. We're getting to be under contract with Fisher Homes. So their layout of townhomes is a touch different. We decided to go ahead and include that here instead of coming back to you for a separate revision for that. But it's just it's a touch different product in that they have 22-foot wide and 24-foot wide product, where Lennar was just 24. Square footages still all meet all of our zoning requirements that we put in place through the PUD. So it's not really a large difference in the product or the count. It's just a touch of a different layout that we have here. So with that, I think we'll answer any questions Commissioner has.
Well, my thoughts on this, you know, you're bringing up all these problems that's going to arise from what the plans say, but those problems were there before you talked about this. So I mean, you're wanting to build the houses here. You guys came with all this stuff saying, I want to build this big house, this family wants to sell this property. You know, let's get it all done so they can all think. And you know, fine and dandy, you got it pushed through. But that gas power thing, or gas pumping place was already there. The culvert was already there. The church was already there. You know, you knew that prior. I mean, now you're coming back saying, you know, this is an issue now. It was there before. You know, you guys want to build this, so it was all there. You should have thought about that before you said you want to build that, to come in and ask us to change because there's a problem.
Jeff, I can answer that. So I don't think that we're asking for a change. We're asking to go by the PUD commitments that we made, which was live and die by whatever A&F Engineering came back. And it was originally going to be GRW doing the study, and then ended up being A&F doing it, and GRW reviewed it and approved the study. And so we were just doing what they said we would need to do. And that was what we committed to through the PUD process.
Okay, and I'm only going to speak for myself right now, okay? I can't speak for these folks. But when we had a room full of people here that did not want this even done at all, okay? My understanding of when you guys sat right there and you said, yes, we will do the traffic study, because that was one of the things that people were upset about, is you were coming in wanting to build this, and you know what, I don't care what your traffic study says right now. Go sit out there in the morning and the afternoon. And this can say there'll be no, my understanding was the traffic study was going to be in addition to whatever our standards already were, which you agreed to in the very beginning. Not one or the other. You guys led us to believe that if the traffic study came back and said something different, then you were okay with modifying to meet those standards. Not one or the other. And
Can I just say that unfortunately is not what the PUD ordinance that you approved says. It says, we will do whatever's needed to be done at the entryways and roadways. It specifically contemplated the entryways, and what I'm telling you is that we met with them and negotiated this with staff. And I have to say, you guys gave a favorable recommendation for the PUD ordinance that specifically says that. We're just wanting to follow the PUD ordinance that everybody approved. That's the rule book we played by, was the PUD ordinance. And I can tell you, everybody voted for the developer shall construct all entrance and road improvements recommended by the traffic study. It doesn't say, and the standards, it says, that's what we're doing. And that's what we agreed to. And we're just trying to go by the ordinance.
So, from my perspective, being the street superintendent, you know, I get what the PUD ordinance says, but I also see what is forthcoming with Bargersville. I also did a little bit of research today, trying to dive into some of the things that justify, you know, a channelized turn lane or passing blister. I personally have a hard time waiving the entrance requirements because we have it in our construction standards. I guess if we're going to do that, what's the point in having construction standards? In looking at the Indiana Design Manual, you know, if you've got a annual daily traffic or AADT of traffic of 5,000 vehicles or more, a passing blister, what we have in our construction standards, is recommended. And then if you look at the traffic control NDOT's TCDS system or whatever it is, they've got a couple time periods on there. Back in 24, your AADT traffic was just over 7,000 vehicles annually or daily. And then actually it's not 2 dates, it's 2 locations, one closer towards Honey Creek and then one closer to 31. The one at Honey Creek out that direction has that annual traffic of 7,200 roughly. And then the one at closer to 31 has just over 9,000. You know, I understand that, you know, what they're saying and various different things. You know, I will tell you the way I voted was under the understanding that our traffic or our construction standards still had to be met regardless of the PUD. Those are things that I can't speak to. That's more on the attorney side. Lee can answer for that a little bit more.
So, and if I'm not mistaken, when I went through the traffic study, tell me if I'm wrong, because I know you probably dove deeper into it, and I know JRW looked at it. They're saying, by their traffic study, they're saying there's, you know, and this is using their numbers, around 6,200 vehicles daily there. So you're basically 1,200 over what NDOT is saying is recommended for a passing blister?
Yeah,
Is that correct?
well, I think so. And just to be clear, that is just a quick, those numbers that I threw out there was just a quick search on all of that type of stuff. But yeah, I think to your point, I think that's what they're saying there.
So I'm gonna lean, GRW's here, so I'm gonna lean on that side of things. If you can, I guess, piggyback on maybe what he was saying. And
well, I will say, so the road on the southwest side that leads out of Whiteland Road, we did not approve that as part of the traffic study. That was kind of added in after the fact, just so you guys have that, you guys on that one. So, and in terms of the numbers,
Yeah, to clarify, were you talking about our southwest entry on the one that we have in Whiteland Road?
yeah, it was not approved to be part of the traffic study.
wasn't in the scope.
Yeah.
Was it in your guys' scope or in the scope that?
I think the scope that A&S gave us.
Even though they have.
Well,
What's that? Jonathan?
So they have the Whiteland Road proposed access drive.
What's that?
They have in the conclusions and recommendations, they have that.
So they gave us originally a scope to approve, and that was not part of it.
Okay.
I've got it right here about it.
So, okay, but they included it, right?
Yeah, even though we asked them not to.
And I'm understanding, I know we've had conversation about this, and that was because we were under the
We
impression.
knew that we wanted to channelize left turn lane there, and that was not supposed to be part of the deal, you know? That was gonna happen one way or another.
So, and just
Okay. That
Kind
was
of-
not communicated to us.
kind of a little bit of a point of fact of, I guess, the channelized turn lane was, I don't want to say recommended by the county highway department. And we explored that option. I sent that off to GRW. We explored that option, and that's kind of where we started with that. The channelized left turn is not in our construction standards. We do have the passing blister and that type of stuff in our construction standards. So I guess I'm saying that I guess everybody can vote the way they can, but I will say that, you know, if the commission was to vote to do away with the channelized turn lane, I guess I'm speaking here correctly, you could, because it's not in our construction standards. But again, we do have the passing blister in there, if we so choose.
Let
I mean,
me see if I can.
I somewhat understand the Sawmill Road stuff a little bit with the smaller 50-foot, but the Whiteland Road, the stuff I cannot even fathom, because I drive that road all the time, and then, you know, who knows what future growth is going to be out there. It's needed. I mean, you know, like I said, I've been around this forever, and I understand, you know, what you're saying a little bit on Sawmill. I mean, I get it, but I can't even grasp the thoughts of not doing the improvements on Whiteland Road at all.
So I've got the list right here. Originally it was Tracy and Sawmill, Sawmill and Whiteland, Sawmill and Hollybrook, and Sawmill and Bel Air. We were always under the understanding.
Because it was supposed to be
that
intersections.
Left turn lane would be happening. So whenever this was approved, that was not part of it. This was added after the fact. So
Well, that
I
was never communicated to us, right? So we went through and,
Well, like,
okay, but there didn't need to be communication necessarily because it was never part of the approved traffic study. It was added in after, you know. We never thought it was gonna be part of it either, so we always thought it was gonna be a channelized turn lane or a passing blister.
Mm-hmm.
I guess as a point of clarification too, and Dwayne, I want to maybe add on to what you were saying. I guess if the commission would decide to decide to approve an amended plat that does not include the channelized turn lane, and if it's the town's position that we then default to the construction standard, then the construction standards are the passing blister, right? And my understanding was the reason that this got designed as a channelized turn lane instead of as per the town's construction standard was that was an easier way to address the intersection because of the culvert and the gas pipe. And that by you improving that intersection with channelized turn lanes, you're actually improving it in a way that, I don't know, is certainly simpler and more cost effective, but maybe in a way that's possible, where the strict application of the construction standard at that intersection wouldn't even be doable. And I thought that as this evolved through conversations, the town really did sort of take, if you'll allow me to use the word detour, took a detour from that construction standard and settled on the channelized turn lane because the other one just wouldn't work. And so if we say, okay, no channelized turn lane, and then you're back to the town's construction standard, either you've got to go to measures that are extraordinary to make that work, or it can't be done. But I don't, you can, but I think it's simpler, it's doable, it's cheaper than what the town's construction standard would require there. Am I saying that right or close to right?
Yeah, you would need an easement on the south side of the road, because there's no right of way from the center line south on Whiteland Road either, so. That would be part of it, talking to the property owner. I don't know if it's a gas line or what exactly is there.
I think
There's a substation right there.
So, and the only reason I say is to offer some background, and I think, Dwayne, you were approaching that point, and I guess, sort of that phrase, careful what you wish for. If the requirement of a channelized turn lane goes away, that might drop you in a worse position and a more expensive requirement for improvements than what the channelized turn lane is, because that's why you landed there in the first place. Is that telling the story right over the time that this? Okay, all right.
Forget what to say now.
Lose your train of thought.
Yeah. So on, this wasn't what I was going with. So as far as, obviously I see that, I think it's the south entrance going into, which isn't in here, which is probably why, but it's going to be on Sawmill's going to be built to our standard, if I remember right, looking at stuff. It's other than the passing blister. But as far as the A-cell, D-cell lanes, that's, I believe, at our standard.
The two on Sawmill we had set up was 40-foot radiuses out to a 50-foot paper.
So I will say something, you guys read my little memo to you. Yeah, the southern entrance on Sawmill is to your standard, by the way.
That's what I was.
is-
I thought I was looking at that earlier again today. The amended plat, and it was
That
that
one
way.
is versus the north one. The north one.
Yeah. The north one's not. The south one is exactly at our standard, other than a passing blister.
So if you, just to point out what we're looking at, C203, the bottom right kind of points out to what the A-cell, D-cell lanes.
Can I see what you guys are looking at? I know the one you're talking about. Mine shows it as 40-foot radius, 50-foot.
Yeah. So I was gonna say I've got it's even the one you printed out has it right there. This. So your A cell, D cells are that way. I was gonna try to make sure I was gonna pull up the one that's electronic.
Recent one?
That's the one
So even the one I believe that was emailed out. So the one that was sent on the amended that was sent out on 6/9 has it that way as well. So I don't know if that's the last one of electronic correspondence that I had with you guys.
I know what happened, and is that it wasn't. We have two different engineers, because Kinley was too busy to make the changes on the town one, so we had Projects Plus doing that, and they took the original CAD and didn't get it changed up, and when Kinley merged it, they didn't catch it.
Well, yeah, like I said, I don't know that one's really something. That's not one that was, of huge concern. Obviously, I know Whiteland Road is, but so my next question is obviously on that north one, on Sawmill Road. I know there was at least comment before about trying to secure right of way. I believe there was talk in this meeting and then again at the council meeting with wanting to get a hold of the pastor, because we told you, before everything was approved that you guys would have to secure right away. I was under the impression that was basically secured there at the church.
We've had discussions,
Then.
but I haven't furthered them because we came out of this
Okay. that was really my question
We
is,
had the traffic report that said we didn't need anything, so we didn't go any further with it.
okay,
An email or two since then, but have not proceeded forward until, obviously,
okay.
we had this meeting. That was the reason why we kind of stopped pushing forward, based on, the meeting that, when I came down, post this report, and when we were getting into drawings and talking about what we thought we could do along Sawmill. And we had an initial discussion, and so we made those changes accordingly based upon that discussion, and that's where we were.
Okay. I guess my question to you guys is gonna be is obviously the preliminary plat that you've submitted to us isn't what you were planning on presenting, so, I don't,
Like I say, anything's amendable, but it could be amended in the motion on what it is.
I mean, Whiteland Road, like you said, is my biggest concern.
Yeah, mine too. I mean, I've looked at this. I know a 50-foot taper will work on that residential street, no problem. I know it will. But I'm not even disputing that with you guys. But to not do anything out there for passing or turning lanes or anything on Whiteland Road, I just can't even believe that the traffic study even said that. I can't even believe it. I mean, that's just crazy. And it's just gonna get worse. It's just gonna get worse out there.
So I know Dwayne had said, and this is, he had said he had done some research on it, and NDOT, tell me if I'm wrong, NDOT standards said the recommendation on anything over 5,000, they would recommend passing blisters. Is there I know that's what he found through NDOT. I mean, is that from your guys' professional opinion, is that anything?
I'd have to look at it.
Okay.
Yeah, please. That's just brief research that, was trying to find information and things like that. But
Dwayne, I'd be happy to help have that discussion with ADAP as well, so.
Okay.
If you want to send me a quick snippet of what you found, then I'd be more interested in that.
what I found was in the NDOT chapter 46, and I think it was -4M is what I didn't print it out or anything like that. I understand where Gradison is coming from. I truly do, but I'm in 100% agreement with you, Jeff. I can't sit here and justify nothing on there. I mean, we just look at the chance of rear end accidents
Well, if you build a roundabout too, I mean, that's just gonna increase more traffic flow at a higher rate of speed. I mean, there's all kinds of factors there. And in as many lots as you are gonna be putting in there, building this extra thing on Whiteland Road is not gonna affect you that much. I mean, you can do it, and you can. You're sitting here trying to get away from not having to do it, but you can build this. I mean, if we're talking the Sawmill Road, that we're kind of, okay, well, we can concede and work with you on Sawmill Road, then you can work with us on Whiteland Road.
So I guess the question, Leslie, I know Adam had mentioned, just letters and conversation back and forth. We'll call it legally, from the legal side of things. I know you and I had some brief conversations on it. Thoughts on the commitments that were agreed upon versus, I know that the process, obviously, what they're doing right here by asking for a waiver is ultimately the process. Do those commitments waive that at all, I guess, for them having to come and do this process? Because I would assume that if this is what they were wanting to get with, if it was that way, they would have to ask for the waiver of our construction standards for anything. That commitment I'm assuming doesn't,
I think that to try to frame this procedurally, because you all, I think, need to understand what you're being asked, right? And I'll explain it the way I view it, and you guys, you have offered an explanation, but you can certainly say more. I understand Gradison's argument about the commitment, that what the commitment says is we will build entrance and road improvements as recommended by the traffic engineer. I get it. And there is a plat that exists now that has already been approved by the Plan Commission that requires them to do more than what A and F recommends ought to be done. So what Gradison is asking is, don't make us do anything more than what A and F has said we need to do. That's what they're asking for.
It's not 100% true just because we added the papers. Even though it doesn't say
Okay.
to add papers.
Okay,
Clarify.
so
I'm not saying
we're
it doesn't, but I'm just saying.
okay.
we added-
Plus some additional improvements. Procedurally, the way this works is the PUD approval process kind of consists of two processes that run on parallel tracks. One is a rezoning of the property to a planned unit development zoning that is a separate ordinance of itself. And you all may recall that there was a pretty elaborate ordinance that said architectural standards for the homes, architectural meaning that, how they're going to be built, sizes of lots, where the lots are located, the layout of the property, screening, drainage, trails, commitment on closeness to the wastewater treatment plant, any number of things, including development commitments that are Gradison's promise to the town that if you grant this ordinance, we will agree to do these things. It is their promise to do things. It is not a contract with the town. It is a promise or a condition that they agree to honor if the ordinance ends up being approved. And the language that Adam and Mark have referred to and that I just described about the entrance and road improvements will be done pursuant to a traffic study. That's one of them, all right? That ordinance went through the Plan Commission. You considered it. You recommended that the town council approve it. The town council did, and that commitment's in there. The property got rezoned as a result of that. The same night, Gradison presented a plat, which is the actual drawing. It's this that you're looking at, which is a layout of the lots. In order to develop this property the way they intend to, the Plan Commission, not the town council, just this committee, has to approve the plat, which is the layout of the lot, of the subdivision. The lots, the number of lots, the size of lots, the internal streets, all of the other stuff I just described. But it also includes the connection of the internal roads to the existing roads. And once you approve that plat, that's done. Right. Doesn't go anywhere else. The plat that they presented showed this channelized turn lane and other entrance and road improvements on that plat. It's part of it, and you approved it. And so the position that I have taken and communicated to Gradison is, irrespective of the commitment that was made and what either of us think it means and whether it overrides or is in addition to the town's construction standards, we can have that argument, and we take different positions on that. But irrespective of that, the plat that they got approved last year shows the channelized turn lane road improvements and shows the improvements on Sawmill Road. And that's what you have approved. And in order for them to design it in a different way, you have to agree to approve an amended plat. And the one they are presenting strips away that channelized turn lane improvement and I think changes some of the improvements on Sawmill and replaces that with something less. And they're asking you to allow them to submit this plat to replace the plat you've already approved. And it's my opinion that if you don't approve the amended plat, then the only plat they have approved is the one you approved last year, which includes those road improvements. You have a wide range of things you can do, and I think if that's an explanation procedure that makes sense, then fine. I need you to understand what your role is and what you're being asked to do. At some point, if we approach a point where someone's going to make a motion and some action is going to be taken, I'm not sure I fully understand what all of the requests are. I know that some 3 lots have been added and some lot sizes have changed, and this plat would also change the road improvements. But if we're going to get to where we fashion motion, you may have to help for us to identify what all is on this plat that is different from the other. But I think your choices tonight are to do nothing. My sense is, without trying to influence you on what you ought to do, my sense is that the addition of the lots and the changes in lot size probably aren't objectionable and don't raise issues for anybody. To, I think, Adam's point, you know, sometimes after a preliminary plat is approved and it's tweaked and different builders come in and they start to study it more closely, there is a need for some changes to be made. And some of those don't really have an effect on the community, don't raise safety concerns. They're just simply ways to address needs, requests, better design or whatever. And I think some of what they're asking to be changed probably falls under that category. Some of what they're asking to be changed, it seems some of you have pretty strong feelings about, and the one that it seems to be the most sort of controversial and compelling is the road improvements at Whiteland Road and the internal road into the subdivision.
Listen to the sirens and go out to the wrecks at 75.
Well,
Whiteland Road too.
I get it.
It's bad.
I understand. All of that certainly may factor into your decision, but at some point, I need you to consider the procedure that
I
you
understand.
need to
I know
follow.
what you're saying.
No, I know, and the procedure is, I think that because the channelized turn lane and the other entrance improvements were shown on, where they're included in the plat that was approved, they are bound to do them. I don't think the language on the development commitment that they're referring to, that refers to a third-party traffic study, releases them from that obligation. I would say that it doesn't anyway. They will argue that it does.
I understand that.
I don't know that we need to get to the argument because it's on the plat that's been approved. And I think the only way, in my opinion, for them to be given some leniency or some variance or waiver of the requirement to build the road improvements that are shown on the plat that was approved is for you to agree to amendments to the plat. And that's what you're being asked to do tonight. And I do think that it matters that when we got on the other side of the approvals last year and A&F was engaged to do the traffic study and they communicated with the town's engineer on the scope of that study, what it would include, that it did not include this intersection that is now the channelized turn lane that is the subject of most of this conversation. And it did not include that because, well, I don't know, maybe it was never going to include that, but we're hearing from our own engineer that the town expressly did not approve that being a part of the study. And yeah, I get Mark's point. So what? The traffic engineer did study that and made a recommendation about it. Yeah, but we agreed to embark upon this traffic study and agreed on what the scope of work would be, and that was outside of that. So they weren't supposed to be looking at this in the first place, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think at some point as we progress through the evening, we're going to get up against action on your part, and that's the best way I can think of to frame it. Does that make sense? Are there questions about? Okay, so shall we? I mean, let Mark respond, or not?
Yeah. So I've got a few things. So as far as the Whiteland Road intersection I'm not sure why we wouldn't have been studying it. So that's the first part. All the other ancillary changes, I'll call them, other than entryways, are all, everything falls within the PUD ordinance. There's no smaller lot than what's in the PUD ordinance. There is not there's not too many lots that we have. I think we were approved for 90 or 96 of the townhomes, and we're at 70, 71, something like that. So we're well underneath the zoning from a total units perspective. And then the other thing, as far as the plat goes, when we came out of zoning, maybe I'm wrong on this, did we not go to council and then come here for the plat?
No.
We
We
did
did
the
the
plat,
plat at
and the
zoning.
plat was,
Right, and so we were still 30 days
subject to-
away from having A and F at that point in time, if I remember correctly. Lee gave us you can either put the stuff on there and we'll put this, if I remember correctly, communication with the town to us was, you need to put these things on the plat because you don't have the traffic study yet.
That never happened.
Well, as I say, well, and if I remember right, we got the traffic study probably 2 or 3 days after the approval.
Was that after the plan commission approval or was that?
I think that was after the-
the council, that was December 5th, we got it.
Yeah, I was saying, I think it was
Right, we sent it to
after
you.
the council. Right.
So, but as we were going through, in order to keep the plat moving and us trying to get it to where hopefully we were gonna break ground in the spring and get moving, we kept on, in my recollection, and maybe I'm wrong, but my recollection was that we needed to put the stuff on there in order for it to be heard and approved, and then, again, we're relying on that commitment in the PUD of saying, whatever they say, we do. And so that was our impetus to put that stuff on there and to keep it moving, and if we failed in that regard from a communication perspective, then that's on us, but that was the way our team took it. And maybe we read something into it that maybe we shouldn't. I'd have to go relive that moment, and I haven't done that, but I haven't tried to dive into notes and emails surrounding that date, but that was what our team was talking about, and then when we got the traffic study and it started down the road on the construction drawings, that's the reason why the construction drawings looked the way they did, because we had the traffic study to back it up. Without really any conversations, then we started to have some conversations with Matt and Wayne and have, at least, all right, here's kind of what we could do, based upon what we have. And totally agree with Lee on his points of, in order for something to happen that's different than today, there'd have to be some measure taken from your guys' standpoint. So we totally get that. Obviously, that's why we're here. I guess from my perspective, we would have to go back to
This is a public hearing, so.
Matt, just said that there was at no point, and my recollection is really clear on this, that I communicated to anybody on Gradison's side that you needed to include entrance road improvements on the plat while we waited on the traffic study. You may have made that assumption, that may what you thought made sense, but I never instructed you on how to draw your plat.
It came, if I remember correctly, it came from GRW's review.
You just said a minute ago that I said that,
Well,
and I didn't say that.
I thought it came in an email fashion, sorry.
Okay.
And like I said, I'm not super, that's just
Right.
a recollection.
Well, I am, and I didn't tell you how to draw your plat, that's for sure. I mean, not only wouldn't I have, but who am I to know how to draw a plat? So that isn't how those improvements got on there.
All right, so it is open to the public. John?
John Purdy, 45 Ripley Road. One point of clarification and one thing I'd like the board to know. The A&E traffic study, the scope of work does not include Whiteland Road. Now, when you go farther down, it's on page 1, I've got the entire report here. When you go farther down, it talks about an area of study, and then it folds Whiteland Road and the entrance in. But it's not in the scope of work on page 1. The second thing, it sounds like what the board's building towards is, at least in my hope, is the lack of the improvements on Whiteland Road are unacceptable. The changes on Centerline or Sawmill might be acceptable. Question I have is, are those the only changes in this plat, aside from the additional lots? I don't think they are. There's other changes in the new plat. There were sidewalks around the townhomes, on the north side of the townhomes, that's gone. There was a dry basin to the north of the townhomes, that's also gone. In the original plat that was approved, there was a 5-foot sidewalk across the creek on Whiteland Road, that's also gone. So again, the thing that I would want the board to make sure is, rather than saying we'll accept everything except the change on Whiteland Road, there's other changes in that plat that I think would need to be clearly understood before it's voted on. And maybe, I don't know the way to do that, maybe the way, if they want to say, if my assumption is that the changes on Whiteland Road are not acceptable, maybe there's a way to say the changes that they proposed on the center line are acceptable without accepting any of the rest of it. I personally, as a townsperson, would want to understand, I want it lined out, these are all the other changes in these plats that you guys are being asked to approve.
I just want to say that it's my understanding that everything other than the entrances meet the town's ordinance and our PUD ordinance. I say that because you understand what that means legally for a primary plat, as you know, meets the ordinance. Again, understanding the entryways don't, but those other changes that were made part of design as we've been going through still do meet the town's ordinance, both, again, other than the entryways that we're proposing.
So you're saying that the things that John brought up, you have taken those out?
No, we're happy to say what they are, but my point was, any changes that we made internally all still meet the town's ordinance. And for the primary plat, meeting the town ordinance is the bar, that's the only bar. We're asking for waivers related to the entryways, because that's not what meets. But if we came in with a plat that, as long as it met all the ordinances, it has to be approved. It can't be denied. So I was saying that to Lee, just from a ministerial standpoint, if it meets the ordinance, it meets the ordinance. So some of those changes that were made were design changes, we can happily lay those things out. But they do all meet the ordinance. That was my
So are you saying that what he's saying isn't accurate? I just need a simple yes or
Let me address
no.
that for a second, okay? So, if I may. So, I don't have the plans here for the most recent version for the townhomes. So I can't speak 100% to the dry basin, other than it's on the cover page. But
it's not on the page, but it's
and I don't have that specific.
It was removed, that was one of the guesses.
Okay, so we've been working on design, and so we have to, you know, these guys are gonna review all the storm design. I assume you guys do all that. You guys are.
Westler.
I say Westler goes to store.
So Westler's gonna do that review for us, for you guys, that will then direct us on what we need to do. We haven't submitted those construction drawings yet. So the storm stuff will kind of get feathered out on whether we need a basin or don't need a basin. You know, is it dry, is it wet? All those different things through Westler and from sanitary perspective and otherwise through GRW, those all go in there and through what we call the TAP process, and those get worked out. As far as the path goes along Whiteland, we left the gap there partly because we have Johnson County doing the culvert, right? And so when we originally were going down this road, Johnson County doing that culvert, we were trying to coordinate with them to get them to go far enough to where we can bring the path there to get across. So we don't know where it's going to be at this point in time.
I guess the question I have, and maybe this is for Lee in particular, when you say, you know, this was the original plat that was approved, any change has to be approved by the board, does that include those sorts of things? Again, the sidewalk around the town, I'm not all that hung up on it. My point in that is, there's other changes on that plat than what are being discussed. Maybe that's okay, maybe that's fine, maybe that meets the design standards, and therefore it's not necessary, therefore you can't object to it. But I want to make sure we're all clear, there's other changes on those plats than what we talked about.
I think, and let me address the path. The path, we said we were just we ended up, at the end of the day, just granting the easement for the path, was our commitment.
Well, now I'm talking about the sidewalk along Whiteland Road, and it comes all the way up to the creek.
Right.
In the new drawing, it comes all the way up to the creek. In fact, in the new drawing, it's now an 8-foot asphalt, 8-foot asphalt path stops at the creek, begins on the other side of the creek. The original drawing showed 5 feet of concrete, and I assume a bridge, going across the creek. So, you know, I think you have a lot of families in that neighborhood that would want to be able to cross that creek on a sidewalk and not have to walk on Whiteland Road. So, but again, the lack of clarity that I have is maybe that's something that's not up for a vote, it doesn't need action, because it meets the design standards, therefore it's not something we object to. If that's not the case, I personally would object to that change.
But that was a commitment we made in the zoning that we'd have to address through the secondary plat process. That's specific as far as the path goes.
So this is the secondary plat is construction documents.
Okay.
That's a more detailed level.
Okay.
Yeah.
And John, also, I got it pulled up here now. The approved plat does show the originally approved back in the end of November does show an 8-foot asphalt that stops. I remember the one you're talking about the 5-foot sidewalk. But when we were in here talking about it, Johnson County's trails talked about needing a 8-foot or 12-foot walking trail through there. So that was something that they did
That's when Carmen
change.
I mean, I had the final approved.
That's what I'm gonna assume. I'm not.
Well, I went back, I'm on the town council, I went back and looked at the email that came just before that meeting that had the comments.
Okay.
That's the one that shows the 5-foot concrete path across that creek. I've got a copy here if you'd like to see it.
Yeah, but I think that there was a time back in that day where we had the old version of the plat versus the new one. Carmen was here, and I thought it was in front of planning commission. I don't think it was in front of council.
It would be, because it was the primary plat.
She was here when
That's what I thought. So that's when we went through and did all that negotiation. So, I don't know what was sent to you ahead of time, but I do know that we negotiated through that process with Carmen here.
And you agreed to put up, money, you agreed to put up money for when the trail got I remember that one along the thing, they agreed to put up money that you would hold.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Right, but it was all part of that same conversation. So we eliminated the trail that had that I'm saying is now just an easement along the townhouse. And then we widened the 5-foot to an 8-foot, again, for trails purposes, to go through that process.
Now, to kind of piggyback off what John was saying back there, I'm assuming whenever we make a motion for whatever we do, we don't have to make a motion and say, okay, hey, with what they submitted, we approve everything that's on this plat. We could make a motion to say, hey, these are the only changes we agree upon. Correct?
Good.
Okay. And then, I will say this is what's very frustrating to me, and I know it was asked multiple times in email conversations with you in May when we got three amended plats sent to us. It was asked of you guys multiple times, what changed? What changed? It's just the entrances, it's just the lots. You're telling me right now that there's more.
No, I'll be honest with you, I'm not the technical guy. So I'm just saying, if there were changes to the interior of the lots thing, Mark said we added a few, or we lost some townhomes. All of our changes, again, other than, and it's hard to even call them changes, it's been evolutions of engineering over time. It's not like when we do a primary plat, let's just assume when we get to construction documents, there are some things kind of going to look different in the primary plat because you've taken steps through engineering. So when we went back and started doing this amended plat, that had incorporated whatever changes our engineers have been doing from the day we got approved until now to just show the tic-tacky little changes that get made all through the development process.
And that list is, that would be a super long list, like if this lot got a tenth smaller, on this dimension, and this easement, changed to this, and this did that, and it would be enormous amount of list. So the high level is where we tried to go with it.
I get it.
And knowing that the secondary plat process will fish out all those, if there are conflicts, we'll fish those out.
But it won't. The secondary plat process is that the administrator or the planning commission has to determine that it conforms with the preliminary plat. That's not an
Well, I'm
opportunity
saying
to deviate
through
from this.
through the construction tax process, not necessarily the.
But you just said this.
formal plat. I did, but we consider that all together. Secondary plat and construction drawings come for us.
Well, but I know, but you have asked for them not to in this case. Like we had the conversation earlier, we've never had a subdivision where the final plat wasn't recorded before the construction plans were presented. And you're opting to do it, which is fine, to go ahead and build the improvements before submitting the final plat for recording.
Right, so in that
Right.
process, I think we've submitted double check this. Normally we submit a preliminary secondary plat with our construction drawings.
Well, you submitted what you called a final plat, and I remember telling Adam, it didn't make any sense to me, because why are you doing that now when you're not asking for it to be approved and recorded until the improvements are done?
That's part of the secondary plat package.
Typically,
It might be, except that it doesn't track the procedure under the ordinance of the statute. That may be what you do, but to me, there's nothing for us to look at in the way of a secondary or final plat, or to approve or to record until all your improvements
Discuss any
been.
of this
Right,
stuff,
but it gives
that he's talking
the
about that, you
engineering
just make a
review
motion
staff
to
the ability
stay on the
look
original
at
plat and
one
all
and
goes
the
away.
other.
But the secondary plat has to be in conformance with the preliminary plat, approved preliminary
Isn't
plat.
that right?
This isn't an ongoing process where you tweak and change it as you go.
Well,
Do you want me to-
We
level
have.
of engineering on a primary plat is nowhere near the level of engineering when you start getting into the construction.
They have to conform.
You want me to?
And you talk about adding 3 lots. I mean, that's a change in the plat.
But it's not against the ordinance.
It has to be approved.
No, I hear you. I know, I understand.
I mean, I think what you're telling me is we don't have any choice, we have to approve it. I don't know whether that's right, but we still have to approve it.
I understand.
Okay, and so you can't add 3 lots or make other changes to the plat, not get it approved, and say that, well, they're so minor or small, and it's what we always do, that we don't need to really bring it back here, or it's not sort of worth mentioning. And now, you know, the way this, how we came to be here tonight, I think, was you wanting to change the entrance improvements to build something less than what was required. Okay, I get that. Then we got a plat that said, well, we got a different builder, we're adding 3 more lots. Well, that's a change in the preliminary plat. That has to be approved for.
Wait a minute, I want
But
to
and
talk.
we decided, since we were coming through this.
No, I get it.
process,
I get it.
Try to add that in.
But now it sounds like maybe there are several other things too
Can I-
that I don't know about.
Can I
Don't
add-
know
can I
who
add
does
something?
know about,
Can I add something, Lee?
but
I have to look at plats all the time because I'm dealing with one right now where Duke's working along the railroad track. I have to use that legal document, like Lee says, it's the plat. So that drawing had to be drawn off that because I'm measuring off everything to tell Duke, you're 40 feet out of the right of way. You know, now they're trespassing, so they're in trouble. So I mean, I understand what you're saying.
Something that's platted.
Right, it's all platted, so how could you, I mean, the lots on the plat, how could you change something off what's a recorded platted document?
it's not recorded. This one's not recorded.
Oh, this is not recorded.
not yet.
Oh, okay, I look at
There
I'm
is a
always looking at the
difference there.
recorded plat.
Like back to zoning stage versus, like, what you're doing, your thing is for, it's already been approved.
It's a recorded plat that's from the county and I'm going off of it.
Normally, you know, just take your instance in Greenwood, we would bring construction drawings and a preliminary.
Oh, yeah, they have to get everything approved, yes.
It doesn't go to the commission
Right.
until it's time for it to get approved for bonds and all that other stuff. So, but it's just a matter of making, so the review engineer is looking at it, or staff is looking at it and saying, okay, they have a 15-inch short pipe there, we have the proper easement in place. Right? And
All right.
because it's 15-inch versus 36-inch, it may have a different size easement. And those are the type of things that will change as we go through further engineering, that we may change easement sizes because the pipe's too big and we need to have more space.
Okay.
That's the type of change that happens in further engineering. It doesn't mean we're trying to manipulate what's going on here and we're trying to pull a fast one. We certainly are not. We're trying to.
But
And it is.
But where there are construction items that are, I mean, the construction plan approval is yet another separate process that comes after preliminary plat approval, right? I get that there may be changes along the way as review is done. But I think when we're talking about the elimination of sidewalks, or the elimination of a detention pond, or the addition of lots, to me, those are key components of the plat.
I agree with you on all that, except for maybe the drainage basin. Because the drainage basin happens as part of the.
But through the planning process, we have tech review. We have these various different agencies who get an opportunity to see this plat and react to it.
Yep.
And they all come together and they submit their comments. And when you say if it conforms with your standards, you have to approve it. Well, we are required to approve it. But we also go through this review process that involves these checkpoint agencies, so they have input in all of that. We did that. If you take out a drainage basin, I don't know that one of those checkpoint agencies who was interested in it and saw it on there when it was presented in the first instance now wouldn't care that it's gone. It is a part of the plat. It is a component of the plat that has to be included in the plat, like road improvements do, like entrance improvements do. Like sidewalks and lots and internal streets and all those other things.
Well, I'm gonna ask.
And so when you say to me, that's not something that really is a part of the plat, and a change doesn't really relate to the plat, I don't agree that that's the case.
So you don't think that the ordinance, well, we're gonna argue about
Okay.
the legality.
So is
of the
there,
ordinance for-
is there any other comment from the public? If not, I'm gonna close the public hearing. All right, I am closing the public hearing.
I'm gonna make a motion to deny this amendment.
Stick with the original plat.
Is that what?
Yes.
Anybody have any questions, concerns on that?
No, I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 6 affirmative.
All right, thank you.
All right, now I don't believe there's anything else on the agenda. I am closing the meeting. Yeah.
So, Paul, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, real close.
Just happened to get denied for our.
That's actually case of the design.
That are inside the zone. Just happened.
Yeah, real close. That's, I had to go back through and look at what Daniel had sent me. But yeah, I think it's real. Huh?
Is he from the county?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess, pretty quick. That has 5 minutes. To admit it again. I think it's something that we need more to. I don't think you are, as a matter of right, entitled to have your first life.
And John just asked me if that's what I was thinking about. So yeah, and that's how that has to be designed on based off of that speed limit. And that's if we stay at that speed limit. If we jump it up to there, it's gonna go this right.
You work for Greenwood, right? Okay. So here's what they were talking about. I actually had to figure out this.
They put in basically one of these off of South Emerson and that Lincoln. What?
They built the same thing up there on Hickory Road that you're crying about.
Right.
Can I